Hey, good morning, everyone. Today we were in Acts chapter 18, and as I was reading this morning, I saw some really cool parallels between the life of Jesus, or the late life of Jesus, and Paul. And so, Paul is in Corinth, and he's preaching, and then in verse 9 it says, "One night the Lord spoke to Paul in a vision and told him, 'Don't be afraid. Speak out, do not be silent, for I am with you, and no one will attack and harm you. For many people in this city belong to me.'" So Paul stayed there for the next year and a half teaching the word. And so I bet this was really encouraging to Paul. He feels comfortable, he feels safe, he feels like this is exactly where God wants him, and he feels like he has a good direction for his life. And then we fast forward a year and a half later, and it says, but when Gallio became the governor of Achaia, some Jews rose up together against Paul and brought him before the governor for judgment. They accused Paul of persuading people to worship God in ways that are contrary to our law. And so I'm going to stop there for a second, but I wonder if Paul, I don't know if he's feeling confident now or if he's feeling like, well, maybe God's plan and vision for me has changed. Maybe what God wants me to do is changing. And sometimes in our life, we feel like we get a direction from God and we feel like we are on a good path. And then we begin to question that. We let obstacles and circumstances that come into our lives affect how we view what God has for us. And so I wonder if Paul was questioning if this was still God's plan for his life at this moment. But it goes on in verse 14, it says, "But just as Paul started to make his defense," so he's in court now, "Gallio turned to Paul's accusers and said, 'Listen, you Jews, if this were a case involving some wrongdoing or a serious crime, I would have a reason to accept your case. But since it's merely a question of words and names in your Jewish law, take care of it yourselves. I refuse to judge such matters.' And he threw them all out of the courtroom." That's really powerful because that is justice happening, right? That is this new governor coming in, and these religious leaders were like, hey, we can get Paul on some charges right now because this is a new leader that's coming in, and he doesn't know what's been going on. And so we can bend the truth and make it look like Paul is this horrible guy, and we can use this new governor, we can use this change in power and authority to kill Paul. Right, so that's what they wanted to have happen. But this guy comes in, and just like they said with Jesus originally, they're like, no, this case doesn't involve me. But the governor actually saw that he knew where his authority was, and he didn't get involved, and so it didn't work. And so it actually goes on and says that they grabbed this guy named Sosthenes, the leader of the synagogue, and they beat him there in the courtroom, but the new governor didn't pay attention to it. So all these religious leaders were mad that they weren't going to be able to kill Paul through this, and so they beat the leader of the synagogues at that time, of those Jewish synagogues. And that is what justice should have looked like for Jesus. Jesus was wrongly accused, and they ended up killing him based on things that he didn't do. But guys, we're a week out from Easter, and that's, we celebrate the death and the resurrection, mainly the resurrection of Jesus. And if Jesus wasn't wrongly convicted, then there would still be a gap between God and us. And so this morning I'm rejoicing in the fact that justice was done for Paul, but at the same time, justice for Jesus would look like that I'm still separated from God. And that is a sacrifice that Jesus himself made. He willingly laid down his life for us, and that is what I'm rejoicing in this morning. Tune in tomorrow for our next Daily Devo.